In a corporate world where all employees have great leaders with no egos that create fun cultures where people can do their best work, the employees and companies thrive while doing great things for the customers, themselves, and each other.
Well, we know that rarely happens. I'm Jeff Palacio. I have been a leader for over 40 years for every t-shirt size company, from small 16 employees to extra large over 1 million. Please join me while I interview outstanding leaders that will share stories of great leadership and not so great. It will help you become a better leader while poking fun about all the crazy shit that happens in corporate America. Welcome to a special edition of the Corporate Couch. These episodes will be more of a love seat that focuses on one topic and will run 15 to 30 minutes. For each special edition episode, you will hear from one or more outstanding leaders sharing their expertise on the most important challenges in corporate America today. Welcome to another special edition of the Corporate Couch. Today's guest is Ed LeBeau, founder of the Heartland Golf Schools. Ed, welcome to the podcast.
Jeff, great to be with you. Good seeing you there.
Ed and I go back to the early 2000s, where I brought another podcast guest from the Corporate Couch, my longtime friend from college, Eastman McGovern. We were in Ed's 3-day session, but we'll talk about that. But Ed, a little bit about you before we go on. Explain a little bit about your career prior to founding the golf school.
Well, basically, I'm a corporate animal. I spent 10 years in the airline industry in marketing, and then 10 years running logistic companies that I built. And so lots of time behind a desk, lots of time administering people, lots of time putting together business plans. So I appreciate the opportunity to be on this podcast. And basically, when I transitioned to building this business, I did so, first of all, from a business standpoint, putting together a plan with regard to projected revenues and costs, putting together contracts for facilities, et cetera. But since that time, have really focused in on personal behavior. And really what golf school really is about a behavior change. It's not easy. And it's why some people struggle with golf, because they don't realize that they're really wanting to change a habit. And habits, thank goodness, are resilient. Every morning when we wake up, we don't need to try to remember how to tie our shoes. There's a habit. It's right there with us.
Right.
So my corporate background, my sociology background all kind of came together when I said, gee, I really like golf. Let's do a golf school. And we figured out how to build one. And we've done that now for 30 years.
No, fantastic. Talk about it a little bit. I mean, it's one thing, developing the plan for, a golf school and things like that. But like you're, one of the instructors. So talk about that transition. Did you have a really good golf game in your corporate days?
I played a lot. I wasn't particularly skilled at it. I was busy doing other things. But what happened is I got to thinking about this and thought, what do I really enjoy doing? And when I sold my businesses, I looked at other things to buy, corporate franchises, et cetera. Initially, and you'll notice the name of the company is Heartland Golf Schools. I was going to franchise this. And I quickly realized that I didn't want to get into the business of managing people anymore, especially remotely with schools around the country. And so I wound up said, you know what, I'm just going to do this by myself. We'll keep it small and find a way to enjoy it.
Yeah, because people are a pain in the ass, basically. I get it. I've obviously experienced the school, but what makes your Heartland Golf School different?
Fundamentally, what I bumped into by running into a fellow named Manuel Delatorre, although he didn't describe it this way, he recognized something very fundamental with regard to human performance, especially with regard to something like golf. And that is that we learn to use tools, a hammer, toothbrush, fork, spoon. We learn to use them not by understanding how our body works, but instead by seeing how the tool works. And humans have a special circuit in their brain. We're one of the few species that use tools, that if we see how a tool works, the brain can invent how to move the body to do that almost immediately. So the first time that you saw a wrench turn a nut, the first time that you saw a fork stick a potato, your brain began to calculate exactly what muscular motions are needed for that. And what that does is it turns golf instruction really on its head, in that 95% of golf instruction is describing to the player how to use their body to produce the golf swing. When in fact, human nature is just the reverse of that. Show a person what the golf club should do, and their brain will invent how their body will perform it. And what happens is, and it's really quite a miraculous thing, at least many people who come to school report it as such, that when it's the case that they focus on what the tool should do, the golf swing becomes much, much simpler. Trying to manage all these body parts, which all should happen subconsciously, and in the frame of 2.5 seconds, is just not humanly doable. And so for many players, golf feels overwhelming. Mm-hmm. But when you turn their attention to managing the tool, it's something they're good at. They manage tools all day long.
Right.
And all of a sudden, golf can seem doable. It can seem simpler. Their mind relaxes. It begins to open up. Some of the anxieties go away. And by golly, it's just miraculous, the difference it can make. When I began doing the school, we did body focus instruction, much like you will find at 95% of the lessons given. Then I happened to bump into manual dilatory. And at first, I didn't get it. But then shortly thereafter, I began processing it, and I thought, you know what? I see what he's doing, and it's really remarkably better. It's a subtle shift, but it makes all the difference. So we call it, in terms of describing it, in terms of body-focused, we call it club-focused.
Talk about kind of randomly, I guess, meeting one of the top 50 golf instructors of all time, Manuel Dillatore.
Probably 40 years ago, one of the golf professionals here in St. Louis went down to a PGA meeting where Manuel was going to do some instruction. He came back and told his son, who was an aspiring golf professional, you've got to go see this guy. So the son, not wanting to go to Florida and not have a good time, invited a bunch of his fellow young professionals to go with him. They all became disciples of Manuel. And so while Manuel is in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, we in St. Louis had a strong cadre, the largest number of dilatory teachers anywhere in the country. And some years thereafter, I got to bump into one of them, and he said, hey, you're running this golf school. Why don't you come over and I'll give you a lesson? I thought, well, this would be interesting. So I went to take a lesson from him, and expecting to hear all this body stuff, all I heard was the golf club should do this, the golf club should do that, the golf club. It went right over my head. I was not prepared for that. I thanked him for his time. He then invited me to go out to a seminar to listen to Manuel. I wasn't that interested. I didn't like the lesson that he gave me, or at least didn't find it useful. And then he said, we're going to play golf out there also. Bingo. So I hopped on an airplane, went out with him. We played some golf. I went through 3 days of seminar with Manuel. And again, right over the top of my head, I wasn't prepared for it. Jeff, that following year, I'm out teaching and a little light goes on. And I thought, wait a minute, is that the angle he was coming from? So the next year, I called John and said, when's that seminar again? This time I went with pencil and paper, and that was the difference. And ever since then, it's just been a remarkable journey and just such a delight when people come and find that golf can be very easily learned and that they see themselves getting so much better than they've ever been before.
I did not play golf really growing up, maybe a couple times with friends, but no lessons, but played, basketball, football, baseball, whatever the sport was in season, but took it up later in life. And I know my challenges as a beginner, but why is golf so challenging for beginners?
It's interesting. It's difficult for two reasons. One is the most common instruction that's given out there. So very often when a person begins to pick up the game, they'll be shepherded by another golfer, not a golf instructor, another golfer. And the golfer begins handing to them everything that they were handed, and that is you need to keep your head down, keep your left arm straight, keep your eye on the ball, hit down on the ball, get the ball up in the air, etc. All of those things just misdirect the golfer from what they really should be doing. So on one hand, it's the case that what's commonly handed out is really a problem. And second is that golf itself contains a number of paradoxes. Golf, it seems it should be one way, but it's really another. For instance, one thing that a new person will observe in golf is the ball goes so high in the sky. And so right away, we think that that's our job. I need to get the ball up in the air. When in fact, the golf swing should really be intended to propel the ball forward, but the loft on the club face is what sends it up in the air. When a player tries to hit the ball up in the air, they begin either sticking the club in the ground or hitting it very thin, and it's very unsatisfying. And there's a number of these paradoxes where all of our attention is on the golf ball, Whereas this is a target game. Our attention really should be on the target. The analogy would be if you go to watch some young kids playing soccer some Sunday afternoon, and a little 12-year-old girl's got the ball, she's downfield, wide open, she's getting ready to kick a goal. If you slow everything down, what you'll see is her eyes will turn down to the ball, but her mind is on where the goal is, and that directs the action of her foot so it can kick the ball there. Without her mind on the goal, the foot has no orientation, has no direction. The same is true in golf. Our eye needs to be on the ball, but we need to get our club to go to the target. So we really need to be target aware, but we're throwing a curveball when our friends tell us, keep your eye on the ball, which we translate into concentrate on the ball. So it's those two reasons. One of the paradoxes in golf, of which there are 9 of them, and the common tips that people give when a person first goes to pick up the game.
Yeah, I'm very interested on your take. Okay, because so you get out of the beginner phase, meaning let's say you're playing somewhat, on a regular basis. Why do most people not improve their swing or their score?
What's interesting is the very people who are aspiring to play well answer a question very interestingly. When I ask them, have you ever hit a good drive? Everyone says, well, sure. Have you ever hit a good approach shot? One that really just targets right at the flag. Everyone says, well, yeah, I've hit some of those. How about a good putt, something that never leaves the hole, just goes right in? Sure. I suggest to them, and here's the deal. You have the ability. What you're lacking is repeatability. And the reason that they don't get better is they can't repeat. And there's a fundamental reason why they can't repeat. And that fundamental reason is when they produce that good shot, they really don't know what they did to produce it. And unfortunately, because of that, when they pull the 7-iron or the 8-iron or whatever it was out of the bag for the next time, they have all kinds of anxiety because they don't know what produced that last good 8-iron. And now they're filled with anxiety, wondering if this will happen again. And of course, that's not the mindset conducive to producing a good golf shot. And so with regard to why they don't improve, it's simply the case that they don't understand what it is to produce the good shot. And it's very knowable. It's very defined. Golf is a game of physics and geometry. There are certain conditions that when those conditions are met, you produce a good shot. And when they aren't met, regardless of whether your name's Roy McIlroy or Jeff Palacio or Ed LeBeau, if they aren't met, you can't produce the good shot. It's the same for everybody. It's physics and geometry.
Right. I know a lot of people get golf lessons. Some think they don't need them, which I think it's like therapy. Everybody needs just therapy, basically. But and probably everybody needs golf lessons on a consistent basis. But what should people go in expecting from a golf lesson?
I think that people don't expect enough from a golf lesson. There's too much anxiety in that when they go to make the swing, they are too often, my experience is, they're too often embarrassed by the ball flight they're producing. And so consequently, they're just so worried about trying to produce a decent ball flight to show this instructor, when in fact it isn't what the instructor wants at all. So that kind of throws a negative angle on it right away because the player's not easy. But if the instructor can put the person at ease, what the player really should find is that when they leave that lesson, that they've accomplished 2 things. One, a clarity and a logic that makes sense as to what they need to do, and the experience of actually doing it. Whatever the instructor is telling them will produce the good ball flight, they should find themselves doing it during that lesson. They should be able to produce the ball flight during that lesson. Will they be skilled at it? No. Will they be able to do it? Yes. They need to have the confidence that what the instructor told them works and works for them. So when I leave that lesson, I should be able to know that what the person told me makes sense, I understand it, and when I did what they told me, I could produce the good shot. I didn't produce them all good, but I could produce it. And so therefore I have the confidence to practice, and I have half a chance that when I practice, I'm going to practice the right thing. The other thing that I think is really important, and I see it happen just too rarely, is the person doesn't leave the lesson with the lesson in writing. There's a problem. Your brain, mine, and everybody who might listen to this podcast have a problem in memory. And that is we can remember only half of what we hear right after we hear it. So when that person leaves that golf lesson, 20 minutes later, they're remembering half. And if you try baking a cake with half the recipe, it just doesn't work. So with regard to that lesson, they should have clarity, logic, and success. And optimally, If the instructor doesn't do it, they should on their own write down what it is that they learned to give themselves half a chance to practice it correctly and see some real progress.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they're going to go to the range a couple of days later and remembering half of what they heard, they're not going to see any success, and they're going to come up with one of two conclusions. One, that instructor didn't know what they were doing, which that'd be good. The worst one is, I guess I'm just not going to be much of a golfer, which is not correct.
Right. There's been so many technology changes in the last, 20, 25 years, and, so new equipment, this, that. So what's the answer to the age-old question? Is it, the equipment question? Is it the Indian or the arrow?
It's a great question, and it's asked so often on the golf course. People kid one another about it. And the answer is it's both. A simple way to think about it, to get out of golf and something perhaps easier to understand, is a pair of running shoes. If you have a pair of running shoes that are just way too small or way too large, and you try going for a little jog, you're going to find that the shoes really cause a problem. On the other hand, if you get shoes that fit you just perfectly, it doesn't mean you're going to be a marathon runner. So the equipment can get in the way, but once the equipment fit is fairly close, then it's the Indian. With regard to fit, probably the club that is most often not fit is the putter. And for those people that are listening to this podcast, it's real simple. Take the putter and just set up in the living room to make a putt and ask yourself, are your eyes over the golf ball? And for many cases, they're not, because pro shops order putters in a 35-inch length. That's too long for most players. But they order that because it's the same reason why a men's store will order suits with very long pants, because it's easier to make them shorter than it is longer. And so we order these long putters, but nobody thinks they need to fit it. We hold the putter on the very end, which is where we like to hold golf clubs. But because of that, the putt's too long. It's pushing your eyes away from the target line, and as such, it's going to compromise your putting. And there's another number of other small complications from doing that. But clubs need to be fit. The putter's the simplest one. You can do that at home to see if it's fit for you. The other clubs, you should really go to see a fitter to determine, do these clubs fit me? And there's a couple of things that you can know in general, and that is, when you start getting a bunch of this stuff here, this gray hair, we need to think about the golf club shaft, and we need to start working on a more flexible shaft. But again, that's a subject for a fitter. Typically, if you go somewhere, it's $50, $80, $100, something like that, to get fit. But it helps answer a lot of questions, just in case you've got those running shoes that are way too big or way too small and keep you from performing as well as you could. So it's both the Indian and the arrows.
Yeah, I love that. I know in preparing for this, you talked about potential question, and I'd love to see your answer on it, but you talk about how to make golf unfair. Clarify that.
It's unfair if you play from the wrong tee boxes. And none of us get any younger. And so therefore, we should always expect that at some point we're going to move up on the tee boxes. And here's the issue. When an architect builds a hole, they choose a landing area. Every fairway has one, an area where there's no bunkers, there's no trees. It's oftentimes the widest part of the fairway. It's the landing area. And what we should choose is we should choose a tee box that allows our tee ball to land in that area. Second is that if we go to the landing area, what you're going to find is that if the green is very elevated, the landing area is going to be pretty close, so you can hit a lofted shot to that elevated green because it's very short, it's very narrow from front to back, and the ball needs to be up. If the green is very flat and long, now we're going to see the landing area is further back, and that's made for a lower trajectory shot, like maybe a 5-iron or a 6-iron, something like that. So if we play from the right tee boxes, golf becomes fair. We wind up having the same shots the pros do. See, when the pros play from those tee boxes that are way back there, but they're positioned so that the ball lands in a landing area. When we don't land in that landing area, we begin making it more difficult for ourselves than the folks on TV. So an important thing is to ask yourself, am I playing, when I hit my drive, am I able to hit the right shot into the green? So if you think about a course that you play regularly, ask yourself, on that first hole, is the green going to be receptive to a lower shot or a higher shot? And if it's a higher shot, I need to choose a tee box that will let me use one of those clubs in there. And typically what you find is if you will fit yourself to the tee box on the first hole, the architect has built all the holes, so if you choose that tee box again, it will fit your drive and your approach shot.
Yeah.
So
it's so interesting.
Playing from too far back just makes the game unfair. It makes it more difficult than the pros play.
Yeah, I love that.
By the way, I play in a senior scramble, and with my age, I get to play then from the forward tees. We hit driver wedge all day long, and it's
Yeah.
great.
No, I bet. I love that. I love that. And you also talk about expectation syndrome. What is that?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'll tell you, that's a hidden killer right there. If we ask a dozen golfers, experienced golfers, been playing for 10, 15, 20 years, what does par mean? What does that mean? And I ask this question all the time. And the answer I will almost always get is, well, that's the number of strokes you should use for that hole. That's what's normal. The problem is that if we're in a corporate environment and we say that's par for the course, everybody sitting around the board table will mean that's normal. But par is not normal. Par is the number of strokes prescribed for an expert to complete the hole. That's what par is. And I think that is a foundational problem because we believe that we should par these holes. We believe that's normal. And consequently, we don't par them. How many people shoot 72? The average score is 98, way above par. But if we have this expectation and we have this disappointment that I didn't par the hole, that's a real problem. It just puts this cloud over me that, boy, I'm not playing well. I've got to play better. Things aren't going well. I must not be much of a golfer, etc. And that expectation syndrome goes on and on and on. It's for all the shots, not just the idea of par, but for instance, most golfers on an 8-foot putt will kind of get on themselves if they miss it. The average on the PGA Tour at 8 feet is 50%. Now, that's the best golfers in the world. Tell me, Mr. Golfer, where do you rank yourself relative to the best golfers in the world? Are you down a couple of notches? Are you down a bunch of notches? Are you way down there? But we have this expectation, the shot dispersion, the average shot dispersion on the PGA Tour. If we ask golfers, well, how wide, if a player would hit, a couple of bucket of balls, how wide is that shot dispersion? The average shot dispersion is 65 yards. It's why we see them hitting 3-wood off the tee a lot of times. It's not because they don't want to be way down there. They can't fit their drive in the fairway. And being in the long grass or being in the trees is just too penal. They'd much rather be in the short grass and be a club back. So we've got this expectation. We see golf on TV and we think, well, that's how golf should be played. No, that's what I would call a freak show. That's the best players in the world on their best day, making their best shots, and we think that's normal. I've often kidded, I wish there was a back channel where we could see the players at the bottom of the leaderboard playing golf, some of whom withdraw. Then I think we'd see a lot of shots where we'd say, well, I could do that. That looks like me. And those are the best players in the world. They're just at the bottom of the leaderboard. So we've got this expectation problem, and it really colors our own self-appraisal, our own self-esteem, our own self as to our own competence. This is a very psychological game. And we begin hanging that cloud over our head. It just does nobody any good. And that's what I call the expectation syndrome.
Yeah, no, I love that. So when you played corporate golf back in the day, and now you've been running the school for about 30 years. How has your approach or thinking changed in playing? There's a lot of business golf being played today and yesterday and 50 years ago. So talk about that.
There are lots of conventions, lots of associations, and they have conventions. They go off somewhere to these convention places. It's not very often that at these conventions or corporate meetings that they'll have a softball game or that they'll have a tennis match. But the most peculiar thing is most of these conventions and associations are built next to a golf course. Go figure. And of course, almost all of them have golf outings. So golf is very, very common in the corporate world. As you get higher in the ranks of manager and director and VP and CEO, etc., the proliferation, the common element of golf is everywhere. Golf can become very important in terms of a career and in terms of your own career. It can also be very important in terms of business relationships externally. And so what we want to recognize is that when we play corporate golf, we play business golf, to recognize it's not about business. It's about rapport. If you invite a client to play golf, he does not come there to talk business. You can make him feel obliged because you're paying for it, but that's not the mindset you want in him. When you're out there playing golf, you want to be a golfer and a fellow golfer with that client. Business is not to be spoken about. What you want to do is to build a rapport with that person, number one. Number two, you don't want to hold back. Play as well as you can. If you can play better than that person, but do it humbly and do it appreciating his golf shots, it's going to put you in a different position with that client when you go to see them. I've had this happen so many times where I'll take a client out, we'll play golf. Sometimes I'll play much better than they do. When I go in to see them, what's peculiar is all of a sudden they're deferring to me. They're the client. But because, hey, oh, look, how's your golf game? And, how are you doing? It's a very interesting opportunity that we give ourselves when we play golf with a client. The other thing when we're playing with a client is that we want to be generous, not just with them, but with the staff around them. So you want to be extra good as far as tipping people. It presents a very good feeling to the client and also makes them feel generous when they're in the group that is taking care of the cart girl or whoever. So with regard to it, I'd say these three things. Number one, don't talk business. Number two, play as well as you can, but be supportive and complimentary of the person you're playing with. And number three, be generous when you are out there buying services or eating a meal thereafter. It's a real opportunity to build a unique rapport because you're going to get to spend 4 to 5 hours with this person, which is much different than having a lunch. You get to be with them and celebrate their successes, commiserate with their failings. You really build rapport. It's a great opportunity, and it's why I would encourage everybody who is coming up the ladder to ensure that they understand how to play golf and play it well.
Yeah, that's great. In all your years of the school, what kind of leadership wisdom or leadership insights do you see from your golf experience?
I had an opportunity to work with a leadership development company, and we would do workshops paralleling golf and leadership. Because when you talk about leadership, you're talking about behavioral characteristics, and it's kind of hard to demonstrate those in a seminar. But when you take a person out on the golf course, you can begin to have them experience some of those leadership characteristics. One of those is to be very target-oriented, very goal-oriented, to have clear goals. For yourself on the golf course, of course, it's very obvious. There's the middle of the fairway, there's the green, there's the flagstick, etc. But in a corporate environment, we need to recognize that the goals that we have need to be well communicated. There's just no chance of having any kind of organizational effectiveness if people don't share the same goals. That is so important, but I think that it's missed so often that people assume that other people are sharing your goals. The other thing is, in terms of those goals, is in golf, one of the things that you and I have talked about is visualization, is to visualize this thing, to have a corporate vision. Visualization for a golfer, and every golfer at any skill level that can do this, all the players on tour do this all the time, by having a visualization of what you want to perform, that's terrifically informative to the body as to what it needs to do. To explain a black dog to someone is one thing. To show them a picture, now they're all seeing the same dog. So when you have a goal, to have it in form in a corporate vision statement is very, very important because it's so informative, because the old idea of a picture is worth 1,000 words. And this visualization, this corporate vision, again, is kind of this mystical thing that is often misunderstood, and it's in a corporate document, but nobody ever looks at it. But visualization is so, so critical. And the key factor that you and I have talked about is the golf swing lasts for 2.5 seconds, so we have to hold that visualization for 2.5 seconds. For a corporate leader and those corporate executives, they need to hold the corporate vision for 5 years. And to sustain that vision is just so important because it guides every decision they make. Everything needs to fit into that decision, into that vision, which is the same as true when you're on the golf course. So there's a bunch of parallels that are really quite exquisite between golf and corporate leadership. It was exciting to have people experience those in ways that they have always heard about, talked about, but never really experienced. And so that was fun.
Yeah. Love that. Love that. I know you and I talk golf books all the time, but if you had 3 golf book recommendations for the audience, what would those be?
Well, the first one would have to be from my mentor, Manuel de la Torre. His book is Understanding the Golf Swing. by Emmanuel Delatore, Delatore, and you can pick it up on Amazon. It's very reasonable. By the way, there's also a streaming video that accompanies that. That would be a great companion. The second book would be titled The Golf Swing by Chris Riddoch, Riddoch. Chris has done a wonderful job in presenting the golf swing in a much more concrete fashion than the old idea of, now you need to do this with your hips and this with your shoulders, etc. Chris does a wonderful job in conquering both the physical aspects, but also some of the mental aspects of the game. So that's I really enjoyed that book when I came upon it a couple of years ago. The third one is one that I've come upon just recently, and it's not a golf instruction book at all, but it's by Gary Player, and it's the Golfer's Guide to the Meaning of Life. If you are a golfer, the stories that Gary tells in this book and the way that he relates it to his life and to ours is just so very touching and insightful. It's a way that your golf game can serve you more than just as a recreation. It's really quite a wonderful piece. A short little book, but very impactful. If you read that book, I think you'll find that your golf enriches you in more ways than you currently know.
Yeah. Ed, I want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast. We've known each other a long time. Every time I talk to you, I'm not only smarter about golf, I'm smarter about life. So thank you for putting up with me all these years.
Jeff, great being with you, as always. And I'll see you on the lesson tee.
Thank you for listening to this special edition of The Corporate Couch. If you enjoyed the episode, I would love for you to take 2 minutes out of your day to rate us 5 stars and write a review. Please join me weekly where I interview great leaders that share their career journey and their leadership wisdom.